Well, good afternoon, everyone. So we're discussing chapter 3 this week, which is identity and ethical matters in leadership research. So the chapter gets into the first part of the role of identity in research and some of the things I highlighted and participated in the questions was how has your background growing up shaped your beliefs about leadership? And I had said prior to beginning my current career in the Navy, there were only a few Black female leaders, but they had a level of grit and servantship that I looked up to. And then the next question was how has your prior educational training informed your beliefs and values about effective leading? So in psychology, which I have my bachelor's in, you learn about the mind and how decisions are made based on need. And as a leader, you must identify the need first and make decisions based upon what is necessary and what is not. And then the last question is, given these factors, how have they led to your specific interest in studying leadership? So I put learning to lead others requires learning what your followers need to achieve organizational needs. So that was one of the things that I put my own emphasis in. The chapter goes into Lori and her research and how her research design and looking at the ethics of it. But before we get into ethics, it was a couple other things that I wrote down in my notes. I made it a little colorful today. So I put recognizing how identity shapes our perspectives is important in helping to see and build bridges based on such diversity. So your background and who you are as a person develops what type of leadership research or your leadership study, what interests you in that. And also what might be best for the researcher might not always be best or the most beneficial for the participant and vice versa. So we got into the ethics part of this chapter, and the definition of ethics, which is pretty simple, is the principles that help us uphold behaviors that we as a society have decided are beneficial and important. The chapter describes the three ethical frameworks. There's more than three. I learned in ethical leadership course, but the main three is deontology, ethical skepticism, and utilitarianism. Deontology is where a behavior is either always ethical or always unethical. It's like no gray area. Ethical skepticism is based on the unique culture or the environment or the perspectives, and that determines if it's ethical or not. If a group or this culture decides that this action is ethical, then it is. And if another group says that same action is unethical, then that's what it is. And then utilitarianism is basically the greatest good. So if it's more beneficial than harmful, or if the costs outweigh the benefit, if the benefit outweigh the cost, then it's ethical. If the costs outweigh the benefit, then it's unethical. And a couple last things: the values that researchers should hold when working with humans. Number one, respect for persons. Number two, beneficence. And number three is justice. So making sure that you hold those values when conducting research and working with other humans. And then the last part was the policies that you should have when designing your research that involves people. So the number one is informed consent, which requires participants to provide either explicit permission or passive consent by like a consent form, or returning the form if you do not want to participate or something like that. That would be passive. Another policy is freedom from deception. And the book does say if deception is necessary, include a debriefing, a dehoaxing, and a desensitizing after the data collection ends, and make sure that the participants are aware that they were deceived, to protect from um, protect from harm. But another policy is freedom to withdraw. So reminding your participants to avoid feeling to avoid feelings of coercive pressure. So just making sure that, especially if it's in an interview setting, that you remind them that they do not have to participate and they can stop at any time. Another policy, which I mentioned just now, was protection from harm. So it's emotional or psychological harm, not just physical. So making sure that you protect your participants from any emotional or psychological stress or distress that they may experience while participating in the research. And then the last policy was expectation of privacy. So you should be able to involve anonymity if you can, and if you can't, then making sure you have confidentiality in your research, so that people understand and trust that their personal identifiable information is not dispersed, widely dispersed. And maybe if it has to be where we can't keep your anonymity, like you let them know, like it's only the researchers that know who said what, before we compile them all in the data. So that was chapter 3. I'm still leaning towards doing an individual approach to my research project or my research topic, but these help shape how I think about any future research, or if I change my topic again, and just making sure to keep in mind the ethics when you're involving other participants. So thank you, or other humans. Thanks. Have a great week.